Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Molly and today I have my March wrap up. Honestly, cannot believe that it is already the end of March. When I'm filming this, it is Easter, so it is the last day of March. Tomorrow's April 1st. I literally just can't believe the March is already over. It's kind of crazy. March was a little bit of a weird reading month, I'd say, for me. It was really slow at the beginning, and then probably the last week or so I read quite a few books, so we're just gonna get into it and talk about it. So first, I always do my stack, the books I read recently on top and the books I read at the beginning of the month at the bottom, and so I always have to change it. Okay, my camera is doing something really weird right now. I don't know if that made it. Oh, it just unfocused. I don't know what just happened. Okay, hopefully, whatever. Okay, first book that we have for this month is Good Material by Dolly Alderton. I am such a Dolly Alderton stan. I literally love her writing so much. Just the way that she writes and the way that she explains things. I think she just describes the in your 20s experience very well. This book is very different though than what she usually writes. I feel like this is a breakup from the perspective of a 35-year-old white male, which I've never really read a book specifically this is kind of literary fiction, general fiction genre. I've never really read that type of book written from a male perspective, but honestly this was so interesting. I heard someone say, I think it was Rachel Catherine, she said really good actually. This is kind of the same concept but from the male's point of view instead of the girl's point of view, and it was very interesting. It's basically about this guy Andy, and he's 35. He lives in London, and him and his very long-term girlfriend, they end up breaking up. To him it's kind of out of nowhere, but you kind of see I feel at the beginning of the book it was very it's his point of view obviously, so you get all of his opinions and thoughts and point of views on the relationship and kind of everything that happened. But the more that you hang out with this character and the more that you see from him and the way that he interacts with people, it started kind of cluing me in. I was I don't think you were as oblivious as you like to pretend that you were. I think you understood that the relationship was going to shit, you just didn't want it to. And this was very interesting and I really liked it. I think I gave it 3 stars, 3 or 4 stars. Okay, yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't crazy about it, but it was good, and it's a Dolly Alderton book. And Dolly Alderton writing, I will literally write her grocery list or read her grocery list. I love her writing so much. Next we have Sophie Cousins' The Good Part. This is another general fiction, literary fiction book. This is about this girl named Lucy, and she's 26 and she lives in London, and she basically is not doing well in kind of all aspects of her life, her relationship, her romantic pursuits, kind of her professional, her personal lives, her friends, everything is just kind of going to shit. And one night after dinner, she ends up kind of stumbling upon this wishing well kind of thing, and she ends up wishing to be in the good part of her life, and she wakes up the next morning in a random bed with a random man she's never met 16 years later, and she's in her mid-40s, and she's kind of coming to terms with the point that she's in the good point of her life, but she missed all these other points. So I think it was really interesting with that. And this gave me, I think I gave it 3.5 stars. It very much reminded me of The Midnight Libraries, kind of reminiscent of that, with the same thing of wanting to wish to be at a certain point in your life, and then you kind of realize what makes that so good is because of the things that come up to it. You can't just really skip to a point in your life. It's not gonna mean as much to you, if that makes sense. So that was good. And then I read Dear Dolly by Dolly Alderton. This is basically, she did, my back hurts so every time I do one of these videos I'm halfway through having to readjust because my back just like cramps up so bad. But anyways, this is basically, she did a column called Dear Dolly in like a magazine or something in London. And this is just basically her, like, all of those advice columns just kind of like combined into a book, and that's what this is. I didn't give this a rating. I did enjoy it, but not as much as I did Everything I Know About Love. This is another one of her nonfiction books. I think I didn't like this as much because there are like so many, it's very broad, which I do like, but there was just a lot of things that didn't really like apply to me, which I mean is fine, but I just didn't, it didn't like touch as much with Everything I Know About Love, which I feel like really like hit home so hard. But some of these were like really good, like the friendship points I really liked. Some of the points with like family and stuff I really enjoyed, but most of it I was just kind of like, eh. Like, I like her writing and I like her voice, but some of it just got kind of boring for me. Next, I did the tandem read of Throne of Glass. So I read Empire Storms and Tower of Dawn. Basically these are like the same story kind of. They just take place in like different points, like different locations. So this is basically everyone else in the series, and then this is two characters. I'm not gonna say their names because it's very much like these are very far into the series. Obviously I'm not gonna really give like a summary of them just because it's gonna spoil a lot of things. But yeah, I really liked Empire Storms. I gave it 3.5 stars, and then I gave Tower of Dawn 1.5 stars. The problem with Tower of Dawn, the main character in this is a character that I have very strong dislike for. I mean, I think I got a little more on his side and I like him a little bit more after, but before this book I was just like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this book very much because I don't really like him. But I think honestly I only liked maybe 20% of this book. Most of it just felt like it was dragging on so much. Like, I feel like not much happened. Like, a lot happened, but in like something would happen in like a span of like 2 chapters, and then 5 chapters would go by like basically nothing, and that's how it would go. And it was just, I think it was too, because in like Tower of Dawn and the other series, you're with a lot of different point of views. This is one of the only books in the series, at least I think, that is like less than 5 point of views, except maybe like the first book. Every other book has at least like 6 or 7, 8 or 9 point of views. Like, there's so many different point of views in each book. So this one only having like literally 2 or 3, I think there were only like 2, 3 point of views in this book. So it was kind of crazy to just like have that and not have like, in this we literally have like everyone's point of view basically. But I really like Empire of Storms because my girlies are in this book, and I just love this book so much. But yeah, definitely not my favorite in the series, but I definitely did really enjoy it, and it definitely sets up for Kingdom Bash. I mean, they both do, but yeah. Next, I read The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is another literary fiction book. This basically is in the genre that people have started created, which is the in your 20s, fucked up, don't know what you're doing kind of point of view. This follows Rachel, and she is a young 20-something student. She works at a bookstore and she lives with her best friend. And they kind of get into a situation, and they're living in Cork, Ireland in 2009, kind of around like the recession crash. So it's actually like a telling back. I don't think it's a true story, but it's a telling back of Rachel, and she kind of like goes back and forth from when she was like young and in her 20s, and then you kind of like flash forward and see like a mid-30s adult pregnant Rachel, and you kind of like get like going back and forth from the point of views, and it just kind of tells like this really crazy story that happened to them. I think I gave this like 3 stars. I liked it. There were points that were just a little too much for me, and she's a hot mess. Like, she's a hot mess, but I did enjoy it. I did like it, so I will say. Okay, next I read Mary Jane. I will say I was a little disappointed in this book. I've heard so many things about this book, so many like good positive things. So many people have told me this is like one of their favorite books. This is like one of the highlights of, I think a lot of people read it like last summer and they were saying it was one of their favorite books. And I don't know, this just fell flat for me. I think because a lot of it was just a little too weird for me. I don't know. Basically, this is about this girl named Mary Jane, and this takes place in 1970s Baltimore, and she decides to become a like summer nanny for this family that is literally the antithesis of her entire family. Her family is very like upper middle class, white, Christian, like very just like cookie cutter, bread and butter, like just very like simple minded family. Not simple minded, but like very just like simple classic family style. And the family that she ends up babysitting for is just this insane, like hippie driven. The dad's a doctor, but the mom is like Peter Pan almost, like doesn't want to grow up. They are like hosting a rockin' like superstar couple who the rock star is like recovering from like cocaine addiction, and it's just insane, and she ends up babysitting for them, and it's just kind of like her tales of her story this summer. Like I said, there's a lot of just like really weird parts of this book, like they would like break out into song a lot. Sorry, a little too much for me. A little too much for me. But I think I gave it like 3 stars. Next, I did my reread of Finding and Keeping 13. Obviously these are 5 stars. I did an entire spoiler reading vlog of these, so go watch that if you're interested. But these will always in my heart be a 5 stars. I like genuinely don't think anything could ever change that. I just love my babies so much, and I can't wait for Taming 7 to come out. This made me like so much more excited because I started like focusing more on the other characters. I feel like when the first time you read a book, any book, honestly, not just this one, you're obviously focusing like so much on like the main characters and the main story going on. And then when you go back and you read it the second time, at least for me, I feel like I pay attention a lot to like the background characters and like the background stories. And in this, especially Keeping 13, there's so many like background things going on with Claire and Gibbsy that is making me so excited for Taming 7. I can't wait. Next, I read Broken Bow by Sophie Lark. This is like the 5th book in the Brutal Birthright series. This is definitely probably my least favorite in the series. I don't know, it like was doing so well for me, and then the last like maybe 40% I just wasn't a fan. I don't know. I literally can't even tell you why. I just didn't enjoy it very much. I think it just, all these books in the series kind of follow the same plot to me, which I mean sometimes isn't bad, but at the same time I was just kind of like not feeling it, and I didn't want to DNF it, so I just kind of like pushed through. I think I gave it like 3 stars. Next, I read a bunch of books on my Kindle. Actually, not a bunch. I read 2 books on my Kindle. So I read the first 2 books in the Tattered and Torn series. I read, one second. Tattered Stars and Fallen Embers. I gave Tattered Stars 3 stars, and the second one 3.5 stars. I think Tattered Stars I didn't like as much just because I didn't really like the main guy character. I don't know, just like the chemistry was weird to me. Basically, this series takes place in a small town in Montana. It's called Wolf Lodge or Wolf Gap. I think it's Wolf Gap, Montana. And there's kind of just like a lot of like weird stuff that goes on. It's kind of like cult vibes a little bit. But the first book is that what you're following, oh my god, what's her name? Everly and Hayes. And Everly is like, she grew up in kind of like this cult, very like conservative family values and all that kind of thing. And an incident happens when she's 11 that is actually tied towards Hayes's family. And she ends up, after this incident happens, Everly ends up leaving Wolf Gap and going to Seattle to live with her sister. And she's gone for like a really long time, and then she comes back, I think like 15 years later or 11 years later, something like that. She comes back to Wolf Gap and decides that she wants to like take care of the family house, because it was left to her by her mom. And so she goes and she kind of like goes back and tries to like fix it. She gets in a lot of trouble with like her family, 'cause her like family is still kind of mad at her about what happened. And then her and Hayes kind of like start a relationship, which there were like points that I really liked, but there were other points. The relationship just kind of like fell flat for me because there wasn't a lot of chemistry with them. It just felt like they were focusing more on like the other parts of the book, which honestly I was interested. I was interested in a lot of like the other points, but it's a romance book, so I feel like if we're going to be talking about romance, I feel like we should be talking about romance, you know? And then the second book, which was Fallen Embers, I gave 3.5. Honestly, I could put it back down to a 3. I have like the same feelings about both books. The second one kind of fell flat for me too a little bit. Honestly, I read both of these. I went to New York this weekend. I read both of these on the flight and then like off the flight. Like I read these probably in a 48-hour span of each other. They're just very like quick, like brain rot kind of books, honestly. Like if you just don't want to have to think about anything for at least like, I think they're 300 pages long each. You just don't want to have to think about anything and you just want like a cute little Montana book. There's also like a lot of angst and like drama thrown in there, which is like my favorite thing ever. I love when there's angst and drama in romance books. Like, give it to me. So yeah, that like literally just like brain rot. But the second book is about Hadley, who is Hayes's sister, and then Hayes's technically best friend Calden, but Calden is also best friends with, or used to be best friends with, Hadley. And Hadley is very like a kindred spirit, very like free-spirited. And because of the situation that happened when they were all like super younger with their family, their like family, specifically her mom, is very like nervous and a little, I wouldn't say overprotective, but like very kind of like cautious, like over cautious of things. And so she kind of like butts heads with Hadley a lot, and Hadley and Hayes, or not Hayes, Calden, I can't remember like what is, I think it's Calder, I think that's his name. They end up kind of like getting closer, and there's like a couple situations that happen. That one was crazy because I feel like I kept getting lost because there were like 4 different things that were happening, and like one of the things they didn't really like resolve, and it was just like really, I don't know, it kind of threw me for a loop there. And it was also, like I was saying, I was reading it like in a 48-hour span, and I read it when I was in New York. So I was just kind of like reading it whenever I picked up my phone, like when I was sitting on the subway or when I was at the bar or like whenever I was just like not doing anything, I was just picking up my phone and reading. And yeah, I think that might have been the disconnect. I just like was reading it. It's just that book, like the point that I was at, it was like there was just so much going on, like so much back and forth, that I was just kind of lost, but I was also following along. Like I was lost, but I was here for it at the same time, if that makes any sense. And then the last book I read this month was Men Explain Things to Me. This is by Rebecca Solnit. This is a series of essays. I think it's 5 essays. And basically the first one is about mansplaining, and then the other like 4 are just literally the silence and erasure of women in history. I thought it was very interesting. Definitely very like academic and like very heavy with like the smart words is what I would say, but I did really enjoy it. And yeah, I think I give it like 3 stars. So yeah, okay, those are all the books I read this month. I hope you guys enjoy. I love you, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.